So why is giving and receiving feedback in the workplace such an important part of our business culture? We are really pleased to welcome Inge from iTrust onto the podcast today. He's going to give us his take on this. Welcome, Nick. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me along today. I'm very grateful. Nice to meet you, Becky. I know Kathy for some time now, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Cool. So we're going to go straight in. iTrust is quite a unique service that you have created for businesses and other organisations. Can you tell us a bit of the backstory, Nick, about how it came about?
You said quite unique, Kathy. It's very unique. There's no one else in the world doing what we're doing. And I'm very proud of that, obviously. So, yes, in a nutshell, I used to be in the police until I retired nearly 7 years ago. Spent most of my service recruiting informants, criminal whistleblowers. And as you well know, Kathy, I'm no James Bond, but that's my world at different levels across the UK and abroad. And I've got two children who are now 23 and 25. And Louis, our son, who's 23, played a lot of football. And I thought, listening to all the nonsense on the touchline as a football fan, as a dad, how can we help people report stuff in football, certainly at a grassroots level, that's maybe not so savoury, because I could take my skill set and my policing world into that world. So that's what we did, and started running a hotline on a mobile telephone. Crikey, I sound really old, don't I? On a mobile telephone in October 2019, and parents at the club that we played football at started leaving messages. I started writing out the equivalent of a police intelligence report, sent it through to the club, and then friends of mine said, who've got some very big businesses, said, look, why don't you create a software platform where people can not only speak up, forget the whistleblowing word, but they can pray, they can suggest, they can feedback, they can report a health and safety issue, they can give feedback in every single sense. And that's what we did. And I'm no techie, but we created this software platform and built this business into where it is now. So we've got sole traders who use it, along with some very large organisations across the UK and abroad as well. So that is it. It's a very long story, but that is it in about 2 minutes.
Yes, the long story is really worth listening to. Perhaps we'll have to do that another time. But for the purposes of today, we'll take the story in a nutshell. So thanks for that, Nick. What I'd really like to understand from you, since iTrust has been out in the big wide world and doing so well, what impact have you seen it have on businesses, and how does that sort of display itself from an owner's perspective and also from an employee's perspective, if you have that?
Yeah, really interesting, because when we set it up quite a few years ago now, we didn't realise how different businesses would be using it for different things, right? So, for example, sole traders use it for the purposes of marketing because we have a buy one, get one free model. So company get it and they can get an additional account for local charity or sports club. So that's how they use it, and they use it for feedback for their own business. As it scales through different sized businesses, what we find is the bigger companies, I won't name them, but they use it for culture within their organisations rather than the gifting element to it. So they're more concerned about their staff being able to give feedback rather than the ability for them to market their business by gifting it to whoever. So different organisations use it for different things. This is fascinating. And as we scale as well, the software has been upgraded. So we don't see the reports that go straight to the client, but we can see in the back end how many reports of different types that the client gets. And honestly, it's really fascinating. The vast majority of reports that our clients get are about the positive and the change, not the negative, right? Which the vast majority of employees, and I'll come on to other people who use it as well, but the vast majority of people go to work, they want to work and do a good job, and they want to go home and start again, But they want to be able to suggest it to improve the workplace, not just for themselves, but for the organisation and their colleagues. And to see those stats when it says the majority of reports about the positive and the change is fantastic for me, because this is not a whistleblowing feedback platform. This is not a compliance system. This is feedback in every sense, because I used to work for a big organisation in the police, and the amount of them complain that there was no proper system to give feedback. You could say to your line manager or by an anonymous whistleblowing hotline about issues, but it was difficult, and no one was saying it. From my perspective, that was common across when I was a supervisor in the police as well, that's common across the board. But it's, what we've done is created this very simple to use, very accessible and timely feedback system. And what happens as well is the larger organisations, they have the posters with their iTrust account accessible, QR code, link on the websites everywhere, and it shows what that organisation's about, that they're honest, open and transparent. So they're using it as a marketing tool for the organisation to show what they represent. And as we've grown as well, we've created a trademarked iTrust certification logo. And what happens commonly is, and you have it as well, Kathy, on your website, that it shows what that organisation stands for, let alone just having the system within their organisation. So the logo has become part of a sort of a quasi ISO trademark. It's a kite mark. Sorry, it's more than the software. What it means to the organisation, and it attracts staff. It helps retain staff, and a lot of clients as well use it for feedback from their customers. So the QR codes go on email, signature blocks, they go on everywhere, and it shows that they're open to feedback 24/7, 365. And for me, it's not just about giving any stakeholder a voice; it's about showing what the organisation stands for. And it's exciting for me because it shows me how organisations are adapting and using it for different adaptations in terms of what suits their own market, their business, and different sizes of businesses as well. So. It's actually, and it's fascinating to see. I'm going on a little bit now how it gets adapted for different industries, which we could never have envisaged when we first set it up. So really interesting.
No, I mean its evolution has been really interesting to watch from the outside. So I'm sure for you, we start these things off and we don't really know where they're going to go, and it's gone down paths that you didn't expect, which is great. And the fact that it has an impact in so many different ways. Like you say, it's not just within the organisation, but it's outside of it, and also what it means for the reputation of that business. I think it's really powerful. So do you have any examples that you can share confidentially of what a difference it has made?
Oh, I can give you those examples. We don't see the reports, like I said.
Yeah.
We sometimes get shared the reports by our clients who show us what the reports are. So if I give you one in particular, and it's a relatively small organisation compared to some of the clients that we've got, and it's one that I use because it's not about the good. It is about the good, but it's about someone who was stealing from a business. And you know this anyway, Kathy, but basically what happened was one of our clients is a leisure industry based client, and they've got 40 staff, and I did an onboarding for their staff on a wet and windy Tuesday evening, a few years ago, and say, look, these are the reasons why the company's got it in. This is what you can do if you use the software. Please use the software. And there were lots of young people in the room. And then a few weeks later on, the owner of the business said, I've had a report through. It's about one of my managers stealing from the business. So the report was anonymous because the user can choose to be anonymous. They can choose to upload any evidence, but they can choose to be known as well if they want to be. So it gives the flexibility from a user perspective. And the report was about the manager bragging to the rest of the staff. I mean, bearing in mind they were a junior member of the team, and bragging that they'd been stealing from the business for 2 years. So the owner, then checked all the CCTV, checked the till, checked the stock, and sure enough, it wasn't tallying. So he called this manager in and said, look, this is the report, it's anonymous, however, this is the allegation. And the manager wasn't contrite, didn't apologise, basically, just didn't care. So instead of just leaving the organisation, the owner got the police involved, and this manager, for all their troubles, got a police caution for theft. Now, for me, that then is obviously validation that someone has, used the software, it's gone through a process, someone has been challenged about their behaviour, who for whatever reason won't contrite and apologise, and then they end up with a criminal conviction, which then they have to declare further down the line in terms of going on holiday to America, yada, yada, yada. And then I know eventually, and they got obviously kicked out of the business, the person that put the anonymous report in eventually put their hand up to the owner and said, I was the anonymous person, and the reason that I did it was because of this. and the owner was super grateful. But what it does is it shows what that organisation is about. It shows that those staff members aren't going to get away with doing things like that because, you know, they're going to get, for what the better phrase, grasped up. But why should anyone steal from a business and, you know, it's wrong anyway? And for me as well, like I say, it's validation about, you know, us creating a business for people to give that voice, because then they go home to their parents, carers, you know, whatever it might be, partners, and say, right, you know, I have had this opportunity at work. I'm going to call out that idiot who's done the wrong thing, and someone's done something about it. And when I first set this business up years ago, I always said, we're never going to work with clients that don't believe in the system, because ultimately, we're taking money on a subscription basis from them every month. They use it for the right reasons, but if they don't actually act on the information that comes in, which is not just about the bad stuff, but the good stuff, what's the point? Because the user then goes, what's the point of me putting time and effort into sending a report when nothing happens? And then they tell their colleagues and friends, and then it's an absolute waste of time. So I'm not about, you know, doing anything in life for the sake of it. So it's absolutely pointless. And you know, Kathy, and I keep repeating this, I'm not doing this for the money. It's a business got to make money, of course it is, but it's more than that. This is about, I suppose, my old world of, and it sounds really cheesy and hackneyed phrase, and it's making a difference, because you know what it's like when you go into the workplace. It's frustrating sometimes, and when you don't get a voice, what happens is you leave the organisation, you go and tell your friends and family that this organisation's not as cracked up to me, and this is not a tick box exercise. I've also said this to businesses. This is not about ticking a box so you're compliant with the regulator, or this is what a waste of time. It's a waste of money and energy and everyone's efforts. It's pointless. And life is very short, as you all know, right? I've got friends who aren't around anymore. This could be my last day on the planet. Hopefully it isn't. I want to see the podcast before it goes out, obviously. But if life is very short, what's the point of getting up out of bed, doing something, ticking a box and go back to bed again? That's the long answer to your very short question. Sorry.
No, and you know, Nick, that's exactly my ethos, and it's why we've created Better Minds, Better Business, because I'm passionate about helping small businesses to manage workplace stress and looking after their people and looking after themselves. And much as there is a tick box exercise attached to what we do because of the legal requirements, actually the thing that floats my boat is that making a difference. So I obviously know quite a bit about you, and iTrust Nick. Becky doesn't. So Beck, have you got any questions for Nick?
Well, I was thinking as you were saying that, Nick, that there must be so many, probably mainly leaders, that would just assume that if somebody had something to say, they would say it. When the reality is that's not what happens a lot of the time. People come home, as you said, and complain to their partner or their people that they're around. My boss does this. My boss is sick all the time and isn't ever there, and I don't know what to do, and they don't put it in the system or whatever, right? Stuff like that. And often when I've had conversations like that with friends that might be complaining about things like that at work, I'll say, have you told anyone? And nearly always the answer is no, because they don't want to get caught up in any drama. They don't want it to, especially if it's toward leadership, come back on them. So I think the anonymity and being anonymous is the part of the key there, so that people feel that they can get those kind of things across. Just out of interest, do most people use it anonymously, or do a lot of people want their name on it?
We don't see the reports, but I think if you're going to say something positive, or you're going to suggest a change, you don't mind your name being put out there, because then you'll seek to be the enabler of that change, right? Or the praise to a colleague. People don't want to be grasses or snitches in the world of whistleblowing, right? And that's my old world, right? So and the reason I call it iTrust is because when we used to go and recruit people, they used to say, right, who can I trust? So trust everything, right? We all trust each other to do a good job, and right, who can I trust that you're not going to spill the beans about, you know, grassing up a burglar or whatever it might be, right? And when I do my onboarding, funny enough, to the right audience, I always say to them, right, put your hand up if you've ever been a grass or a snitch, right? Shock horror, the vast majority of people don't put their hands up, right? Occasionally people put their hands up, and then everyone looks at them in the room and go, oh my God, and then sometimes they share their stories and sometimes they don't. But no one wants to get grass.
Does anyone ever go, he's a grass, he's a snitch? Does anyone ever do that?
Because people aren't perfect. I'm no angel. Right? And then you go, I can't trust that person because they're going to grass me up. So they don't then. And then what happens is people get overlooked for promotion, courses, or they get made redundant because they can't be trusted. And, you know, so the answer to your question is the majority of people, I would assume, don't put their name to something which is controversial, but they're more happy to put their name to something that's more positive and more, empowering in terms of changing the organisation. I mean, that's why we gave them the option to choose whether they want to be anonymous or not. And the amount of times I come across whistleblowing hotlines or email your concern to whistleblowing at companyx.co.uk. Who's going to use that? And then what happens is all the metrics are wrong because they say, we haven't got a problem with this organisation because no one reported anything until it is headlines for all the wrong reasons. And then what happens is very large organisations, and I will mention it, for example, McDonald's with the sexual harassment issues that are very well publicised and ongoing, they're playing catch up in terms of their reputation now, which is going to damage them, has damaged them for years. And you see it commonly where, organisations haven't got the right feedback mechanism. They think they've got things in place, but what they're not doing, they're not putting themselves in the shoes of the user. And I suppose the difference is, having been through my world, I know what it's like when people are literally bricking it but they want to do the right thing in terms of telling someone about criminality at different levels. And that's the difference. There's a lot of people out there who think they know what it's like to create a safeguarding software platform. We're not doing more than that. But they don't understand, I don't think, what it's like to be in the shoes of the user. And I've seen something, it was a couple of years ago, it was a government body reporting mechanism about adult safeguarding, put it that way. And honestly, this form was more interested about your demographic than about the information before you even got to the point where you're trying to talk about what you wanted to talk about. What's more important? I know the ethnicity and the demographic background of the person reporting, or the linking information in the first place. You haven't got the information because people give up with it. What's the point? Well, personally, all it takes 40 minutes to produce and go through. People haven't got the time, especially in that mental health space when they're really vulnerable and they want to report particularly the bad stuff. Believe me, and I've been there, did it in the police. The last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time and effort trying to find what that reporting mechanism, where it is, and then go through a whole process about who you are, who you're anonymous. By the time you've got that point, you're a 43-year-old male working in this department, but the only thing you don't ask is your name, right? And you're anonymous. I mean, it's like the star surveys. Well, they get like 20 or 30% feedback in terms of how many people actually use the system, right? Because you're anonymous, and they ask you what department you're in, what's your level of service, what role do you perform? Come on, really? Oh my goodness. Yeah, and in my world as well, I keep talking about that, I don't know why today, but honestly, some people in different departments, because we used to get information from someone, write it down, pass it on, right? Some people in the other department where that information were trying to play hunt the source. They were trying to play guess who the source is, not who's doing the burglaries. Just get on with it. It's like, this is not a game. This is about getting to the issue that's, pertinent to what the person's reporting. Not this is certainly not a game.
Do you think, therefore, in let's say really small businesses where you've got an owner, founder that runs it, and maybe 5 other people, that it does become more of a who reported it thing rather than an act on it thing, and that the bigger the organisation, actually, the more anonymity there is?
Yeah, but then I'll go back to it's a great point, but then they use it for different things. They use it for the marketing by gifting it to a local, because they're 5 or 6 people in business. They probably wouldn't do very well anyway, I'd imagine. However, there's still that possibility they can report stuff, but the business use it for a marketing tool. Yeah, going back to the question that Kathy asked earlier as well, different organisations using it for different things. We've got a client that made some people redundant a few years ago, and what happened was they don't get many reports, but some of the people that got made redundant tried to take the organisation to a tribunal alleging whatever they were alleging. And before it got to the tribunal level, it all got kicked out because the lawyers got involved and said, hold on a minute, you had iTrust to report these issues whilst you're in the business, why didn't you report it? Right? Which is really interesting. So they use it for different things. I forgot to say that one earlier. So that organisation still got it, and they're using it not as an insurance policy, certainly not, but they're using it because they could have been really badly stung from a headline point of view as well as a financial point of view, but they weren't because they had it in place. So, and they've learned through practical experience as well. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Have you ever been a grassroots snitch, Becky?
Someone else has. I can blame them. That's me being a snitch on a snitch. No, of course. And that's the thing, I think. Actually, everybody has in some capacity at some point. Probably I was at school a lot more than it was called to do. Yeah, I'm sure. Ross said this to me. Yeah. As a grown-up, I think it's also a very British thing. We don't want to get involved in other people's business, and we just sort of keep our head down. You do you. I'm not going to get involved. But I do genuinely think there's a line, of course, being a snitch or a grouse on every little thing. But there's a line where you go, if the management do not know that something's happening, let's take McDonald's, for example. If more people knew that that was happening, probably would have had something done about it before it got to this point. I think there's a need for being a snitch in that sense sometimes. But there's...
well, again, I'll bring it up. Something I created years ago when I was doing sort of similar sort of presentations in the police called the moral mile, right? So it's like a vertical and a horizontal line, and then there's a diagonal going up. And where on that line would you decide that you're going to say something, right? So it's based on your age, your experience, type of issue, and then you get to the point where if you are the victim of, God forbid, domestic violence, then it's more it resonates with you more, right? If it's shoplifting and you're a burglar, would you report the shoplifter? If it's in the workplace and you're stealing and the company boss is a complete whatever, then you think, do you know what, I'm going to steal from them because that's my revenge because they're not doing that, whatever. So there is that moral mile where you add an age thing as well. So, for example, if you're in a position of just about to get promoted in the business, would you put your head above the parapet to grasp someone up because you're thinking, physically, I'm doing my own legs here. So it's all really complicated. And then you just make the decision, go, do you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to press that button and say something about the particularly bad stuff. So you're completely right, Becky. There's a whole lot. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. So just to be done from a scientific point of view, to go, do you know what? This is when there's a tipping point here where it gets to the point you go, I'm going to say something. As well as you look in very well published. I mean, you go back to McDonald's, right? If that was the son or daughter of the chief exec of McDonald's who'd been sexually harassed in the workplace, do you think something would have been done about it beforehand? Well, I was going to guess, of course it would be, right? If they're so far removed from the shop floor and they're very anonymous and they've got other things to worry about, like the share price, revenue, damage, reputation of the business, they don't want to suddenly go wash their dirty linen in public, are they? Going, we've got an issue with young people who are working 24/7, 365 in a drive-through in South London, for example. They're not going to do it. Well, I mean, they'd be pretty, I don't know, they're probably not doing themselves any favours in terms of their career. However, now they're picking the bones out of the press going, do you know what? Now we're playing catch up, we've got work-based training, we've got a reporting mechanism. Yeah, but the damage is already done, isn't it? And people now associate. Well, and also you go back years with Jimmy Savile in the BBC. Like the amount of people reporting stuff and nothing happened because they were worried about the reputation of the BBC. And I'm not talking out of turn, this is very well documented. People were more concerned about the reputation of the BBC than they were about the victims of Jimmy Savile. That is it's not right, is it? But that's what happens. And I'll tell you the other thing as well, I was going to say earlier. When I do presentations to organisations and ask questions to a young audience, they're far more prepared to put their hand up and say they've been a grassroots snitch. Because they're far more prepared to call out the idiots and the wrongdoing than the older people who, maybe from a generational point of view, would rather do that and not say anything because of the reasons. But the young people, my children, like I said, they're 23 and 25, they join organisations because of the reputation of the organisation, not just because of the salary they're going to get. They're concerned about the planet, about what that organisation is doing in terms of ESG, CSR. They're far more concerned about that one just find the greasy pole of promotion and money. I mean, there's obviously some people who do that as well, but younger people see it through a different set of eyes, in my experience anyway. So.
Yeah. I wonder if sometimes, I don't wonder, I believe this to be true, people don't report things as well because they think other people will. You might have heard, I remember this from sociology class that I must have done 15 years ago, but I think the example was a true one. that there was something that happened in New York, and it was kind of one of those, there's a square in the middle and the buildings go around the square and they all have that shared garden kind of thing. And there was a lady that was being attacked by a group of men in that space. And after the fact, when the police heard about it and came, I think she might have ended up actually being killed. Police came and talked to people, and something like 12 neighbours saw it happen. Not one of them called the police because they all thought someone else must be calling the police. And it's kind of crazy when you think about that really you'd want the young person morality maybe there of going, oh, it doesn't matter if the police get 12 different calls. It's better that they get 12 than none.
Yeah.
And again, coming back to the being anonymous bit, I think iTrust really helps people to go, okay, if I'm scared it's going to come back on me, it probably won't because it's going to be anonymous. It's easy to do and quick. There's not a big long form that I've got to fill in. I don't have to speak to someone and go through it all. Removes all those barriers, hopefully, making it easier for people to just say something.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'll go back to that adult safeguarding form that I saw. Honestly, it was long and report. We designed it so it's why, what, when, where, and how. Like 5WH, WH, whatever it is. And then you can upload it, and it goes. It doesn't go into a big sort of bin of load of reports, and it just gets picked up on a Tuesday morning. It literally goes as a PDF into the inbox of the client. And I think from a user point of view, once they know, when we do the onboarding, we explain how it works and the process, but they know it goes straight to the organisation, not just into some sort of, middle management, email box and it just gets deleted. It goes straight to the top, certainly for the smaller organisations. I mean, other organisations goes into HR, they filter it and do what they need to do with it. But they can do it 24/7, 365 anywhere in the world. So if they want to be, sending a report when they're lying on the beach because they come up with an idea when they're on holiday, or they go to a restaurant, or they go to a client or a competitor in the industry. Oh, that's a great idea. Why don't we do that in our business? They can send it. And what happens with the business when they do staff appraisals and PDRs and all that sort of stuff? They said, right, okay, you've had every ability. I should do the supervisor, right? Well, obviously, you didn't have iTrust in the police then, but you tell me what you think of me. Tell me what your colleagues. Tell me what you cannot then, having worked in an organisation with iTrust in it, they complain that you haven't had the opportunity to report the bad stuff, the good stuff. It's another level of that sort of staff appraisal process where people can say, what they want, what they can do. But one of our clients with a very large organisation, and every year they did this. Well, they probably still do it this year as well, a staff survey, and every year they were getting the same answers from their staff saying, oh, lack of communication, we never get a chance to, and they've got like 550 employees, and they already preempted what the results of the survey were going to be, so they already had iTrust lined up as an antidote to it. So they said, oh, look, you said this, we've got iTrust coming in, and I know, because I look at the back end and see the amount of reports they've had, there's loads, which is great, because they're using it, and then that's validation for us going, do you know what, people actually, and that's the best of it. I think for me, to see that someone using it, right, because we've got off our backside and created something, marketed, sold it, and then but ultimately someone's used it, particularly for the bad stuff. And because, I mean, some of our clients said a few weeks ago, they remember this team who's seen in the organisation as they got 3,500 employees, seen as a miserable supervisor, right? But someone put a good report in about them, and then their line supervisor contacted them and said, look, we had this report, and the smile on their face because they were so negative about everything, and then they go back to their family, say, oh, it's a report about yourself, going, oh, I'm amazing. But, and so in terms of our FAQs, we get questions like, am I going to get, as an organisation, an overwhelm of reports to deal with? Are we going to get, Walter Mitty type reports? Are we going to get all that? It hasn't happened. You could, people could put bomb scares in about schools. But it doesn't happen. People don't do it generally. I mean, even in my policing career, we came across a few Walter Mitties, but very few. I mean, people can flock up to the police and become, I want to be a spy, can't they, and report all sorts of nonsense. But you soon wheel them out, and people don't bother with it. They don't do it. You should think, especially when we work with football clubs, we've worked with a lot of sports organisations, and people don't report the racist issues in football a lot of the time. They do, but they don't. it goes on a lot of I don't know if you follow football, but there's a lot of abuse in football, all sorts of different for different subject matters, which is terrible. But a lot of people don't report it because they just do that, or they don't use the system, or whatever. But it goes on and on. But hopefully we're making some headway. I know we're making headway there. So in fact, I'm going to a game tomorrow. So we've got the software in to English Football League clubs on trial.
Nice.
For fans with disabilities to report stuff, good, bad, and different. So I'm going to the. Oh no, I won't say the game because it's timestamp this podcast when it's. No, I will go to the game tomorrow. There you go. Yeah. Now it's 2028.
So Beck and I, when we had our previous podcast, we were just talking about feedback and, the impact it has either way, giving it and receiving it. I think it's the power of it from the perspective of a positive, where staff feel like actually the business I work for welcome my feedback and allow me to give ideas and make suggestions, makes for a much more positive culture in business. And obviously that's what we're all about, is encouraging that. And it's just really great to hear what you're saying, that it's there for the reporting the bad stuff, but it's also there to encourage people to, give a shout out for their colleagues. I mean, we all feel good when we get a shout out, don't we? So how nice is that to have that? And it must create a much more open and inclusive environment.
Absolutely, yeah. That client I mentioned, they've got the 550 staff. What they do is every quarter they say to their staff, "You said we did." Right? So they said, "Right, over this quarter we've had X amount of reports about this, and this, and we've done this with it, or whatever, and we couldn't do this with this because we didn't have the finance at the time, whatever." So it just makes everyone, like you said, Kathy, inclusive. They feel like they're part of the organisation, not just going in, making visits and go home again. They feel like they've got a voice, and it's so important. As well as you think, I'm not HR, but you think how much it costs to recruit someone, train someone, and then to go through that whole process, because people then go through this whole churn of, I don't like working for an organisation because they don't listen to me. Because the best ideas come from the shop floor a lot of the time, don't they? You look at programs to John Harvey Jones in the day, this shows old down, going back to the shop floor at Sainsbury's and stuff, and actually finding out what the workers are doing who are stacking the shelves and stuff. They're the ones who've got the best ideas to innovate and change. Yeah. And then if they feel empowered and then their suggestion meets whatever, then maybe they financially incentivise to create change and do things better, because they're the ones who are literally doing it day in, day out, not the ones who are in fancy management meetings trying not to, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I get it. Come the revolution. I'm joking.
Oh, great. So, Beck, have you got anything else you'd like to ask Nick while we're here?
Well, I think just generally the culture of feedback, and obviously having iTrust as a way to do that, but even if people don't have it, I guess it's the importance of encouraging it, good or bad, the importance of it being part of the culture, not just an option, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And genuine feedback, honestly. The amount of times I look at certain review platforms, and this is very well documented as well, certainly TripAdvisor, Google reviews, people are incentivized to give 5-star reviews. Oh, come on. You cannot, that's just Emperor's New Clothes. That's just lying about the service. And what happens is, the real user experience is nothing like the 5-star experience. I've done it on TripAdvisor. We did it a few weeks ago. We went to Derby for the Derby Birmingham game, and on the way up the M1, me and my wife, Heather said to me, "What should we go tonight for something to eat?" I said, "Well, what do you want? Curry." So I googled best curry house Derby. Turned up at this place. Well, I think there's better curries in Derby, it's got to be, because for whatever reason, it wasn't great. And on Friday night, it was about not even quarter full. There are other places, so for whatever reason, those reviews aren't everything. With this, it's internal facing, so it doesn't go public. But yeah, sometimes those reviews aren't everything, and it's about being genuine. And I think as well as the user experience from an iTrust perspective means that they know that what they're doing is going internal. It's not to promote the business externally by artificially marketing the business by giving amazing reviews. That's wasting everyone's time, isn't it? Like personally, that's my humble opinion about lots of other subject matters. Becky, you can do a podcast about Nicky stinks, but yeah, that'd be very boring. But Nicky doesn't think that's a problem half the time.
Okay, so we'll bring this to a close, but I just want to say that we have iTrust as part of our business because we want the feedback, whether it's internal or external. And we also have a partnership agreement with iTrust that means that our members get access to the iTrust app as well. So, and we've done that because it's so aligned with our beliefs about culture and what we want people within their businesses to develop, so that everybody can feel that, you know, they're part of the business and it's a great place to work, and reducing those levels of stress, which is what it's all about for us. So just leaves me to say thank you, Nick, for taking the time to come on and chat with us today. It's been really informative. Loved having you on. Any words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Words of wisdom. I'm going to do words of wisdom, but what I would like to say is thank you so much for having me on today. Thank you for the opportunity. Really nice to meet you, Becky. I've met Kathy in person, obviously. Yeah, I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was lovely to meet you too. A great conversation.
Thanks, everybody.